Half-Life Alyx is the latest installment in the Half-Life franchise and the latest game from Valve Corporation. This takes place 5 years before the events of Half-Life 2 with Gordon Freeman. This is the first installment in the Half-Life franchise to be virtual reality only, and it's one of the only games I've seen of its stature that happens to be VR only. The only other thing that compares to this is Boneworks. Now, I just have to say it right off the bat, this has ruined video games for me. Ever since I finished this, I have little to no ambition to play anything else. The ecstasy that I felt just a few days ago playing Doom Eternal pales in comparison to this. So where the hell do I start? Well, I'll start where the game starts. You start by overlooking City 17, and it is immediately massively impressive. The Source 2 engine is gorgeous. The lighting is some of the best I have ever seen in a video game. The super realistic textures and models are immersive beyond belief. The shadows just cascade off things. The dynamics to them are amazing. And it looks great on a screen, but trust me, in VR, this is even more stunning. Like many of the Half-Life games, you quickly learn movement, and you just kind of move on from there. The most hand-holding the game does is tell you to press a button for a tutorial. That's all you get. The rest is all intuitive. Even if you don't know the game, you understand what to do. Now, Half-Life has always done this well, but here it seems almost better than ever. You just kind of go for it. I didn't even realize that I was understanding the game. I mean, it's not like you sat me down and said, WASD, go for it. And even if you're not a Half-Life fan, you can immediately understand what kind of world you're living in. The helicopters fly over and the city scanners zip by in the distance. Striders stomp through the streets. It's amazing. The moment that I knew that this game was going to be something amazing is when I met this snark in a jar. For those of you who are a little less educated on Half-Life, snarks are little bug aliens that made an appearance in the first game. They would chase you around as enemies, and they haven't made an appearance in a main game since then. So seeing Valve going back and taking something so old, almost 20 years old, and visiting it again, it just felt like they were back. Right then and there. But then my eyes drift away from the snark and I see that there's a little canister next to him, and I pick up the canister and it seems like food because it's got the holes in the top. And so what do? I shake it over top of his jar. And what does it do? He starts eating it. In just putting this snark here alone, Valve has caught my attention and managed to teach me that everything in this world is interactable, and if I think something will work, then it will work. It was immediately intuitive, satisfying, and responsive. It was wonderful. After this, the game gets you moving around a little more, and the movement is great. Now, I used smooth locomotion for my playthrough, and at first I thought it was too slow, but I quickly found I was wrong. I was able to go for 3 hours in this before I felt like I needed a break, instead of 1 like in Boneworks. And when I needed a break, it wasn't even because I was nauseous, it was because I needed goddamn water. And even if I was feeling nauseous, the smooth locomotion ability still includes the teleport. You need it anyway to clear some gaps or to get down ladders from time to time. It's super useful, and it's great to have that kind of accessibility. The only flaw that I found, the only one, was that I got stuck once, and that was doing something stupid that I was trying to manipulate the game. Now, for reference, mind you, playing through something like Boneworks, I got stuck easily more than 10 times through that playthrough. So the fact that I only got stuck once in this playthrough of the single player campaign, I think that says something. And with all this emphasis on functionality, you'd think that there'd be some sort of flaw in the design, but no! The level and world design is just as intuitive as the controls are. If you walk down one corridor and you get stuck, you just turn around and your eyes are immediately drawn to something that leads you down another path. It's obvious that head orientation was taken into account when designing all of the levels in the game. And this isn't even restricted to just the functionality of the designs. The creativity of the designs is off the charts. Without spoiling much, there's a section that's very similar to the explosives warehouse in Half-Life 1, but here the tension is so much higher. Everything is on edge. It's so dark in the room and you have to use your flashlight to look around. Every step is dangerous. My Fitbit said that my heart rate went up to 120. And I'm saying all this to emphasize that this section of Half-Life Alyx is not as grand as the explosives warehouse of Half-Life 1, but having it in virtual reality and seeing it first person, first hand, it makes it so much more personal, so much more immersive, so much more alive. And this tension is present from like the first 10 minutes onwards. The game is never scared to shove giant things in your face and really freak you out using VR to its full potential. Now the tension reaches a fever pitch when you meet Jeff. I won't say anything about Jeff, who Jeff is, or what role Jeff plays. Just know that there's a character in this game named Jeff. But the section of the game involving Jeff is the most intense sensation of fear I have ever felt in VR. This pushed me to my limits. I had to pause a few times. Speaking of Jeff, you don't see or interact with many other NPCs, but when you do, the animations are quite glorious. When you meet with Russell or Eli or any other number of characters that I won't spoil, despite how cartoonish they may look visually, their animations are just so lifelike. It probably has something to do with their eyes not tracking you at all times. That's probably helpful, and they actually blink. The Combine have more variety this time around. Some beta designs even resurface here and there, and the alien designs are off the charts. Again, I won't spoil anything. I'll just talk about the head crabs. These things look sickening, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of damn head crabs in this game. The weapons are awesome. There's only a few of them in the game, but they're all beautiful. And they're also all one-handed to allow for interaction with the world at all times. This was a really great choice on the part of Valve. I never had to put my gun down. I just had to click something and automatically my hand was free. The animations on the weapons as well, the auto-loading elements, are super satisfying. And I haven't even talked about the best weapon you have at your disposal, the gravity gloves. I mean, they're called the Russells in the game, but I don't care. They are a masterful way to remove a static UI, and it just helps with immersion that much more. The check engine light is super silly and genius. Showing how much resin you have is super useful. And the Combine tech that you put that resin in manages to look realistic despite its blocky and low poly nature from Half-Life 2. That was the part I was most worried about the design, but they managed to pull it off just fine. And when you find these Combine terminals, they're often accompanied by puzzles, which I expected to find in this game, but in no way expected them to appear in this way. The fact that Alyx's multi-tool that you see in Half-Life 2 is actually given a purpose here to incorporate puzzle solving into a VR landscape is genius, and often it's literally rewarding. Like, you get ammo and health stuff for solving these puzzles. And what would this game be if it didn't have puzzles? It wouldn't be a Half-Life game, and the way that the puzzles make use of VR doesn't even feel forced. It just feels like that's what the Combine would do. That's just their security system. It's advanced. Now, that's not to say that this game plays it entirely by the handbook, though. This is the first Half-Life game to feature a speaking protagonist. And while I thought this might be a bit of a weird move at first, it's an established character for those who have played Half-Life at least, so it's pretty good. Russell's dialogue is all great, it's very entertaining. Alyx's is slightly less so, but it's still good nonetheless. And it's not like it's happening at all times, it's not as present as you'd think it would be. The trailers obviously make it look like they're talking all the time, but that's not true. Now, I'm not going to spoil anything, again, but a character that you meet early on that helps you out has my favorite dialogue out of anyone here. He actually managed to make me laugh out loud, something that game dialogue incredibly rarely makes me do. If you've played the game, you know who I'm talking about, but I won't say more. Simply put, all voice actors, old and new, work wonders for the immersion in this game. I said it once, I'll say it again. That's the game's biggest strength. It really makes you feel like Half-Life. And what helps you get immersed even more is the story. I cannot say much at all here because I do not want to spoil anything for anyone. As far as you're concerned, the plot consists of there is a big Combine ship and you're trying to get to it. That is it. You've seen it in the trailers, you've seen it in the art. That's your goal. All I can say is, if you are a fan of Half-Life, you are in for quite the trip, my friend. The finale is, and I cannot overstate this, the most intense thing I have ever experienced in a video game. And it's not because the finale is massive in scale, you're not blowing up planets. It's just how it's executed. Everything from how the environment is manipulated, to how the music blares in your ears and is warping, and the light and the combat, they're all cranked to 11. As a player, I was in pure awe. Now, I suppose that it's not very fair of me to give all this praise and not talk about the issues that I have with the game, because I do have an issue, a singular issue with this game. Here it is. There is one poorly textured patch of rock at the beginning of the chapter breaking and entering. That is it. That is legitimately the biggest flaw I have found with this game. It's the worst offender out of anything I've found because it broke my immersion worse than anything else. Despite only having that one tiny, minuscule issue with this game, for my whole playthrough I was hesitant to give this game a perfect score, but the finale made me realize that was just because it's Valve. I consistently praise everyone at Valve and their output, and for them it's just so effortless. Maybe I was just thinking that giving them another goddamn 10 would feel meaningless, but that's just how innovative Valve have managed to be over the years. This is the best video game I have ever played in my life, and I mean that. When looking to video games, and Half-Life in particular, the goal has always been to provide the player with an experience. No game has ever given me an experience as grand as Half-Life Alyx. This towers above every other Half-Life game as a masterful technical achievement. There are no flaws here. Now, I was one of the people who adopted VR because I saw the Half-Life Alyx trailer. I play other games now, but if you were to ask me, is it worth it to pay $500 between the game and a new headset to play Half-Life Alyx? As pretentious as it sounds, yes. This game is phenomenal. This is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing. This is going to revolutionize the video game industry, and I feel confident in saying all of that. I can only hopefully await that they follow this up. And for those reasons, today, I think we can give Half-Life Alyx a 10 out of 10, without question.